everybody. Thank you so much for continuing this study with us as we work to make sense of the book of Revelation. Today we're looking at chapter 12, and Revelation is a relatively short book of the Bible, so we're getting closer to the end. And if you're just starting with us today, if you just found this, just know that you can go back and catch up on the videos anytime on Calvary's YouTube channel. We hope that you see this study in a way that helps you see that rather than doom and gloom or offering predictions about the end of the world that you need to obsess or worry about, that instead this book of the Bible is filled with a message of transformational hope of the power of Jesus. It may not necessarily leave us comfortable, but sometimes that's okay to wrestle with or feel challenged in our faith. And so today, chapter 12, as we dive into this, we start the second part of the book of Revelation. Some refer to this as the second act in this kind of drama of a vision that John is revealing to us. And in the first act, we had the cycle of the 7 letters to the 7 churches. We had the vision of the slain lamb. We had the 7 trumpets and the 7 scrolls, the crowd or the army from every land and nation coming together as one. So here we are in part 2 or act 2, and it opens with a series of visions or symbols or signs. Maybe your Bible is like mine and it has headers or chapters to the subsections. And this one lists 3 for chapter 12. The woman and the dragon, Michael defeats the dragon, and the dragon fights again on earth. This morning, actually, as I was driving to school, I was telling my 15-year-old about what I was doing today, and I was describing these headers and this chapter, and we both agreed that it sounds like a book he would be likely to pick up and read, or maybe a preview to a movie that he would make sure he would want to see. And he's right. This part of Revelation does come off a bit like a Hollywood blockbuster. We have at the beginning a woman who's clothed with the sun. She's got this regal presence that's mysterious. And she's also pregnant. And as she is experiencing birth pains, we read that a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on its head suddenly wipes out some of the stars, dramatically throwing them to earth. Whoa, that is really, that's intense, right? But hold on to your seats, because that is just the beginning. Because then we get the sense that this dragon, that he's ready to devour the child. But after the child is born, he is taken to safety to God and to his throne, and the woman flees to the wilderness. So you can see that here, just in these first 6 verses, there is a ton of symbolism. The pregnant woman, the dragon, or in some translations, the serpent, the male child who was to rule all the nations, the throne, the wilderness. Not only would this have caused people in John's day to think about these biblical images or these images of Jesus's birth and resurrection, but it also actually would have been a connection to this story to an ancient Greek myth involving a dragon named Python, a woman named Leto who gave birth to 2 of Zeus's children, Apollo and Artemis. So this struggle between the cosmic good and evil of someone being cast into the wilderness, it would have been a familiar one. And the remaining part of this chapter 12 depicts the battle between the angel Michael and a dragon and this woman. And that would have also been familiar to the readers, the listeners in John's day, as it should be to us, as we think about the creation story from Genesis, where the serpent shows up in the Garden of Eden. And as you're reading this chapter, you can read it for its Hollywood-style writing for sure. But I also want you to pay attention to this part of the vision in chapter 12, here in verse 10. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven proclaiming, "Now have come the salvation and power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of Messiah. For the accuser of our comrades has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God." So think with me about that word accuser, accusing, accuses. I think all of us can think about things in our lives that do accuse us. That point the things that point to our errors or some type of wrongdoing. I just finished reading a book that talks about the messages, they call them the soundtracks, that we play over and over in our head, and how those soundtracks can so easily define us. You might think, a mistake I made in college, which was 20 years ago, if I don't allow myself to hear a new message or soundtrack about that mistake, about that thing I did 20 years ago, it can really accuse me in an unhealthy way. And this chapter in Revelation, it talks about the great dragon who is the devil or Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. And it's easy for us to just picture that person with red horns tempting us as it's been portrayed in so much of culture. But I think that this chapter, I wonder if this chapter in Revelation invites us to think about Satan as the accuser, as those messages or maybe the people sometimes that accuse us, that beat us down again and again, pointing out our errors over and over again, making us think that we have to stay stuck in a cycle of shame or of hurt. Now, the end of chapter 12, it talks about that dragon fighting on earth, pursuing the woman who John would have wanted us to see as the mother of all believers. And yet we see that that dragon doesn't totally disappear from the story. Instead, we read that the dragon was angry with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her children, those who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Jesus. So what does that mean for us here on earth, for us as we're reading this? Well, John will continue to take us through this image of Satan through the rest of the book of Revelation. We'll see that accuser show up again. And so maybe it means for us that we wait, but we wait with the great hope of the promises that Jesus has to offer to each of us. That the accuser will continue to show up uninvited to each of us here on earth, but knowing that it was defeated in the heavens means it won't have the final word for us. So I have a couple questions for you today as you dive into chapter 12. First of all, what accuses you? Where does that voice of the accuser show up in your life, uninvited yet persistent? And number two, how can the story of Jesus give you hope in the midst of everything that accuses us? Thanks so much for watching The Daily Dose, for diving with us through the book of Revelation. We can't wait to circle back with you again tomorrow as we look at chapter 13. See you later.